What's going on? Play Game here, back with another 7 video, and today we're going over the balance adjustment preview for April 13th. So it looks like we are getting two 5-star ML units, Last Rider Krau and Closer Charles buffs, along with some RGB Covenant heroes, Ken, Lilias, Ilynav, Tywin, and we're getting 3-star buffs to Christy. The two artifacts for this balance adjustment is Ancient Dragon's Legacy and Crown of Glory. So let's take a look at Last Rider Krau. Still a unit I have yet to pull, but now his code number 00 after being attacked decreases skill cooldowns of the caster by 1 turn. After suffering an attack that targets all allies, decreases skill cooldowns by an additional 1 turn. So he's getting that after being attacked decreases skill cooldowns of the caster by 1 turn. So if he gets attacked, -1, right, on his cooldown. If he gets AoE'd, -1 on his cooldown. So it's going to allow him to cycle a lot faster, right, with his motorcycle horse. Mobile weapon Siegfried, summons Siegfried and attacks all enemies, penetrates defense, but cannot trigger a critical hit. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max health and speed. So now the faster that he is, the more damage that he's going to deal. And on his S1, he does give himself speed buff, I believe. His cooldown, though, is now 7 turns on this, but they also increase his barrier strength, which is, I guess, not too bad. I think for the most part, that's pretty decent, right? It's just allowing him to cycle faster and faster, hitting you with horses a lot sooner. So Closer Charles here cannot trigger a counter attack on his S3. That's the buff. So we'll see how effective that is against turn 2, right? I mean, if you go first, most of the time you can potentially win, but now you can't counter against him. So we'll see how broken this is, if anything, right? Moving on to Ken. All right, so Ken is one of those units that needed buffs, hasn't gotten buffs, and hopefully they made him good. So his Celestial Kick kicks the enemy, decreasing defense for 2 turns. This is his S2 before granting the caster increased speed for 2 turns. He would also get 40 Fighting Spirit when an enemy is defeated. So he does have a condition there, right? When the caster is granted Vigor, ignores effect res. Now he just acquires 40 Fighting Spirit from his S2, which is nice, right? You don't have that condition now to where he has to kill. Phoenix Flurry, this is his S3. Delivers a powerful blow after a flurry of strikes, decreasing attack for 2 turns and stunning for 1 turn. He gets Vigor for 3 turns and his damage dealt increases proportional to his health, so he's an HP scaling bruiser, and starts the first battle with 50 Fighting Spirit and gains 5 Fighting Spirit when attacked. Now, at the start of the first battle, gains 40 Fighting Spirit. So if you S2, that's 40 Fighting Spirit. If you S3, he's got 40 Fighting Spirit, right? So that's not too bad. Despite being able to apply buffs on himself with Vigor and inflict various debuffs on enemies, such as decreasing defense, decreasing attack, stun, and burn, his effectiveness in battle was hindered by his unstable Fighting Spirit mechanic. So before he could only acquire Fighting Spirit by being attacked or defeating an enemy with his skill, Celestial Kick. And so to address that, he's no longer going to gain Fighting Spirit when attacked, but instead he's always going to gain it when using Celestial Kick, resulting in a more reliable and effective skill cycle. So we'll see if that actually makes a difference, but for the most part, his kill is unchanged except to his Fighting Spirit. So maybe that'll make him a little bit better, right? I don't know. We'll see. Lilias. Okay. So this is one unit that has been out of the meta for the longest time. So I'm interested to see what they do with her. So Follow Me Charge. Takes the lead and attacks, triggering a dual attack from a random ally. This is her S1. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max health. So now she takes the lead and attacks, triggering a dual attack from a random ally and increases critical hit chance by 50% when attacking. And damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max health. So I don't know about this one. She's increasing her own critical hit chance by 50%. So that means that you could build her just on like 50%. crit chance, right? Depending on how her S3 works, if it's still the same, then it's going to allow her to be built more as that taking advantage of the attack from the enemy, right? So that's far enough. This is her S2. This was her S2, right? Because before it deploys a divine weapon, granting a barrier to the caster for 2 turns before a 100% chance to provoke the enemy for 2 turns. Now, after an enemy uses a non-attack skill, dispels 1 debuff from the caster, so she cleanses 1 debuff, and activates suppression against the enemy caster. Suppression can only be activated once every 2 turns. Suppression provokes the target for 1 turn and grants a barrier to the caster for 2 turns. Barrier strength increases proportional to the caster's max health, but they did decrease the strength of her barrier. So this is going to put a provoke on the unit that uses a non-attack skill. Am I getting that right? I think so. After an enemy uses a non-attack skill, dispels 1 debuff and activates suppression against the enemy caster. Yes. So any unit that does an AoE or non-attack skill, hey, guess what? They're getting provoked, right? Now that's what it is, automatic. That's actually pretty interesting. On paper, I kind of like that, right? Because that's a lot of openers. Now that's openers that don't have immunity, right? Like you can't do this against Ran. You can't do this against Laika, right? Because of the immunities, unless she has 2s, right? And she doesn't have immunity. So this is kind of interesting. I kind of like that. Her S3 here, ready, load, fire, commands the Prolan army to fire all enemies, decreasing combat areas by 25%, increases critical hit chance by 50% when attacking. That's actually pretty nice, right? So she's getting just a 50% critical hit chance buff to her skills on her S1 and S3. So this is actually going to allow her to be built on that crit damage build, right? High speed crit damage. Now you only need to build her with 50% crit chance because she has an additional 50 on her S3 and her S1, allowing her to deal a lot of damage because she inflicts damage according to the attack of the hero with the highest attack, right? So back in the day, it was Senya Lilias, right? Senya usually has insane attack. You give Lilias insane crit damage, right? 300 crit damage, 4k attack, right? And she does a lot of damage. So I think that's actually pretty interesting. I think she's actually very viable now as kind of like a support turn 2 potentially, right? We'll see. I do actually kind of like that. That's not too bad. Now we have Ilynav. So Ilynav, I don't see a lot of green. I don't see a lot of green text compared to Lilias, but we'll see. So her rush attacks enemy with a spear. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max health. When this skill is used, if it was not triggered by a dual attack, has a 50% chance to use punish instead of rush. The only thing that they're doing about this is her S1, is damage dealt increase. Okay. Punish, this is her S2. Attacks the enemy, inflicting injuries, increases defense of the caster for 2 turns. That was before. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max health. And then, of course, your injuries, right? Now, a successful attack deals additional damage equivalent to 50% of injuries inflicted on the target. So, this one could potentially be insanely strong, right? Because if you S3, now her S3 actually inflicts injury. So you S3 and then you S2 and you're dealing an insane amount of damage. So it could be actually pretty good, right? Because her S3 now inflicts injuries and the severity of increases proportional to them. Injuries decrease max health of the target by up to 20%. This time, every time this skill is used. Okay, so yeah, she's getting just like a insane damage buff, potentially, right? Potentially. Straight up injury unit now, which I think is very nice. Now you don't have to build her on injury set, right? Now you can put her on speed set, speed HP, counter, right? And she's going to deal a lot of damage. I actually like this too. Wait, are they actually doing a good job of buffing these units? All right, Tywin. Let's take a look at Tywin. Tywin, he's been gone for the longest time. His Sword Storm attacks with a Sword Storm with a 75% chance to dispel one buff. Damage dealt increases proportionally to the caster's max health. You can soul burn this for a 100% chance to dispel one buff. His Commanding Shout, this is S2. So he is the OG Flan, right? Commanding Shout grants increased attack and critical hit chance to the caster and ally for 2 turns. So this is after the buff. He is now immune to debuffs which prevent movement, right? So he can't be restricted. When the ally in the back row has a debuff which prevents movement after being attacked, activates Commanding Shout on the target. Can be activated once every 2 turns, and Commanding Shout dispels all debuffs from the ally and grants immunity for 2 turns. So full support Tywin. That's kind of interesting, right? It kind of reminds me of Crozet, right? ML Crozet, right? Where you're protecting the backline unit. Now this one is going to cleanse and give immunity, which is pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. Debuffs which prevent movement, stun, sleep. So it's not restriction. I guess maybe I'm thinking like CR instead. Just preventing movement. So can't be stunned, can't be slept, right? So I mean, is that pretty good too? That actually sounds pretty decent. He's getting skill cooldowns on this as well. All out attack. This is his S3. Attacks all enemies again after a Sword Storm with 100% chance to decrease defense for 2 turns and increases defense of all allies for 2 turns. That's actually pretty okay. So they're turning him into a full support unit, right? Your back row can't get stunned. They can't get slept. You're giving everybody defense buff. You're giving your backline immunity, right? So he could potentially now be a great turn 2, right? Maybe even anti-cleave unit. So he does have EEs now. They are changing his EE. So instead of the decreasing cooldown for his all-out attack, what it's doing now, it is increasing combat readiness of the ally in the back row by 10% when using Sword Storm. So when he S1s, they get a 10% CR. That's pretty good. Before, his other EE, which is option 3, increases combat readiness of the caster by an additional 20% when using Commanding Shout. Now it's increasing Commanding Shout's barrier strength by 20%. So, you know, so far, all of the buffs actually seem really good. They actually seem really good on all of these units. Let's take a look at Christy. She's the 3-star unit here for this one. Has a 50% chance to counterattack when attacked. So I think they are removing this and they're changing it to after being attacked when the caster does not have a debuff, increases CR of the caster and the ally in the back row by 20%. Can only be activated once per turn. So she doesn't counter anymore. Now she's giving CR to the unit in the back row by 20%. That's a lot though. That's a lot. So they're removing her counter. I don't know if this is going to make her any better, but it seems like they're on a similar trend, right? Protecting the backline, like all of the units so far, protecting the backline, giving them some sort of survivability, whether that's can't be prevented from moving or taking a turn, right? Giving them CR push, giving them a way to cycle faster. That's not too bad. Crown of Glory here. This is the 5-star artifact. Before it would just increase defense. Okay, that's it. Now, when an ally suffers an attack that targets all allies, decreases damage suffered by 10 to 20%. So this is like an adamant, right? And removes 5 souls from the enemy. When more than 1 damage reduction effect is granted, only the strongest effect, blah, blah, blah. Okay, so that's actually pretty good now, right? You're removing souls when you get AoE'd. So to me, this says turn 2 balance adjustment, right? Hey, you need a way to fight Cleave? Here you go. Here's some units to help you fight Cleave. Ancient Dragon's Legacy. This is Mort's. Okay, this is Mort's one. After the caster uses a non-attack skill, decreases skill cooldowns of all allies but 1 turn. Okay. And has up to 100% chance to increase critical hit damage. The skill cooldown reduction effect can only be activated once. I mean, I guess that's a Lua counter, right? But this means that they have to not be reduced in skill cooldown, right? That means they have to resist it. So I don't know. I don't know about this one, right? This one's kind of interesting. We'll see. We'll see where this gets some play. But for the most part, I actually like all of the buffs. I think if anything, they're all winners in my book. Maybe except Christy. They removed her counter, but I don't know. We'll see. I haven't really played too much with her. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right, that's going to be it for me. Let me know your thoughts about the balance adjustment in the comment section below. Like always, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed, hey, think about subscribing. It really helps the channel grow and reach more people like you who like content like this. Like always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Peace.